teach the UX Fundamentals course. I have a bachelor's degree in biological anthropology. I briefly went to graduate school before deciding to pivot into tech. So I took a coding boot camp followed by a design intensive course, and that led me to where I am today. So let me just pull up my screen share. I'm used to presenting with Zoom, so still getting used to this platform a little bit.
It looks awesome, Madeline.
Okay, so just a little intro exercise. You guys can answer in the chat what brought you to the hackathon, and are you participating in projects or just coming to kind of watch and learn a little bit more? I just want to make sure that the view is the full looking correctly on everyone's screen.
Sorry, Madeline. Yeah, I got stuck on mute. Yeah, it looks great. Full screen.
Okay, perfect.
Perfectly. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you. And then as I went over my background, okay, what this class is going to cover and not cover. This is kind of like a shortened, amended version of UX Fundamentals to prepare you all for the hackathon. So I'm going to be going over key concepts and the design process itself. I'm not going to be going into design history and theory that much. I'm not going to be covering career information and tutorials of any kind. I am going to dip into UI a little bit. I'm going to touch on that. But as far as like design tools that I'm going to mention, those are things that you're probably already familiar with or that you'll need to learn a little bit more about to work on your projects. No question is a stupid question. You can ask me anything throughout the presentation. If I don't know the answer, I will try and figure it out, or you can send me an email and I can respond to that later. I'm also going to list some resources at the end of the presentation and a link to the GDI regular class schedule. So if you want to learn more, you can look into that. Yeah, and throughout the course, I'm going to be pausing to ask questions and feedback. You can respond however you feel most comfortable. If you want to go off mute and answer, you can do that, or you can just respond in the chat. So this is just a little overview of the topics. We're going to define the concept of UX and how it differentiates from UI. I'm going to go into all the different steps of the design process. And then I'm going to leave you with a short resources section with various websites and design tools that are going to help you for the hackathon if you're participating in that. Okay, so coming from whatever level of experience and background you have, think about how you would define the concept of user experience. So you can just take a minute to think about it, or you can respond in the chat. Okay. So user experience is the sum total of all of the interactions that a user has with a product or service. UX is not limited to just the interface of a digital product. It's every phase that a user goes through or might experience using that product. So, for example, if you have a problem with an app and you need to call customer service, that conversation is a part of the entire experience as a whole. Here are some important keywords. The user is a person interacting with the interface. The interface or the screen is the bridge between the user and the content, and the experience is every interaction that the user has with that product. So the interface, the experience isn't limited to the interface, but the interface shapes the experience. Okay. UX and UI are often kind of talked about together. They're not the same, although they are related. UI is about the visual elements of a digital product, and UX is about the information architecture. It's about usability. It's about content. Everything that's not a visual element of design is going to be part of UX, and everything else that's visual is part of UI. So here's a list of different elements of UX and UI. Just take a moment to look at these and think about which ones you think would be UX and which ones you think would be UI. Okay, so as you can see, UI is related to the visual aspects of a digital product, and UX encompasses more of the strategy, psychology, and user flow. It's more about the content and functionality. So I'm going to walk through an example of a user experience from start to finish. This is Sasha. She just arrived in New York City to visit someone. She's not familiar with the city, so she is going to use a ride share to get to where she's trying to go. So she needs to get from point A to point B. She's going to open the app on her phone. She's going to input her destination, which is about 10 miles away, and she's waiting for her ride to arrive. The driver arrives, she gets into the vehicle, and is then driven to her destination. And as she arrives, she's given the option to review her driver on the app. So as you can see with this example, the experience goes goes beyond just the app itself. It's every interaction that she has throughout the entire process. Was she easily able to identify the driver? Did she feel safe in her ride along the journey? Was she given ways to get in touch with customer service if she needed to, etc.? Those are all things that you want to think about during the UX design process. Okay, so now getting into the design process. And I just want to note that there's no one, set universal design process. It's meant to be a guideline. So you can take these steps and use it as a basic structure for when you're working on your project, but it doesn't have to be exactly like this. Teams adapt to what they need and how they work together. So it might look a little bit differently. But this is a good basic basis to work from. Oh, I'm sorry. And I also wanted to mention beyond these 6 steps here is going to be development, launch, and further testing and analysis. But I'm just focusing on UX and a little bit of UI here. But keep that in mind as well. Okay, so kickoff is, you might have already done this if you've been through the team building initiation phase. It's a discussion within your team to understand what your core objective is with your project. This is providing a lay of the land so that everyone is on the same page about what your objectives are. You're going to be defining your goals, requirements, and expectations. Voicing any questions and concerns, forming a communication plan. And at this point, you should be able to explain the main purpose of your app or your product in one simple sentence. And I'm going to mention some project management and communication tools at the end in the resources. So we'll see that. A discovery phase is when you're going to research as much as you can about the specific industry that your product is for. So any existing accessible data that you can find online, you want to gather that and use that for the next step. You're going to research trends, guidelines, brainstorm what you kind of want for your app, what you don't want, and compare qualitative and quantitative data. So qualitative data is anything that can be measured with numbers. For example, 10% of users who visit this page make a purchase for this product or something like that. And then quantitative data is everything that's not, qualitative data is anything that's not measurable with numbers. And that is more it's more anecdotal and specific to a user experience within a given context. So for example, a customer leaving a review for a product and where they say, this made me feel good for this reason, or I didn't like this experience for whatever reason. Okay. Um, Also during this phase is competitive analysis. So you want to research other companies which are similar or adjacent to the type of product that you're going to be making. A good starting point is to find 3 to 5 brands and then assess the functionality of their product. So this is just a little example chart to go off of, but you're going to list the competitors and then um, write detail about what they have, what they have in their app that you like and that you would like to implement. What are they missing from that app, from their app that you can improve on and implement in your app? And kind of use those examples as a guideline, but also think about what you can do differently and how you can improve upon what's already out there. Okay, the next phase is strategy. And this is where you're going to be using all of the information and brainstorming that you've gathered in the previous 2 steps to start planning what you want your product to have. So in this phase, you're going to be defining who is your target audience. Um, you're going to create user personas, create customer journey maps, and you can do an empathy workshop. And then start making a list of features that you would like your product to have. So just for example, if a user persona, if you're not already familiar, is a fictional character that embodies members of your target audience. So usually looks like a little profile card, and you're going to give your user persona a name, a picture, an age, a job, and all of these details that embody what your main target audience member is. So you can include statistical data about where do they live, their gender, their occupation, things like that. And then psychographics, which is going to be values, interests, and hobbies. And experience level, which is like how familiar are they with the subject of the type of product that you're offering. So once you have at least one main user persona, keep that persona in mind throughout the entire rest of the process and think, are we making a product that would please this specific user? What kind of problems would this user have with the product, and how can we fix those problems for them? Okay, so next step is going to be concept. And this is where you're going to start to outline the scope of your product. So this is a little image. This isn't a real sitemap, but a sitemap is just going to be like the basic skeleton of the most essential pages and features of the app. So you're going to take your research information and your user personas and transform that into what you want for the basic skeleton of your app. The sitemap is going to clarify what the user flows are going to be. And it's going to map out the basic content and functionality requirements. So a content requirement An example of a content requirement is like we want to have a contact us page with our phone number. So that's something that you want to have a page for in the website or app. And then a functionality requirement is something like we would like the user to be able to purchase this product through the app. So that's going to be a function, and you're going to create a user flow for that. Next step is going to be wireframing. Wireframe is a basic sketch or guideline for the interface before you start going into aesthetic elements of the product. So wireframes should be simple, minimalistic, grayscale. You're not adding color or images yet. It's just to provide a basic layout that's building upon what the sitemap was. So for example, the sitemap, you're just going to have, you know, and you can even do it on pen and paper. You're just going to have like a square that says homepage. So you know that we need to have a homepage. And then for a wireframe, you're going to build upon that a kind of basic, a basic interface design where it just has the elements that you want on that homepage, but you haven't filled out the actual content like writing and color, graphics, icons, and things like that. So that's going to be a later step. Okay, so the next step is actual designing. So this is when you're going to incorporate aesthetic elements such as color, typography, and shape. You might consider making a mood board, choosing a color scheme. The visual mockup should be an identical replica of what your final product would look like live on the website. So you're filling out all of those elements that we hadn't gotten to before in the previous steps. So choosing a consistent font, making sure everything is fine-tuned and that it looks how you want it to look. These are hi-fi designs as opposed to lo-fi, which the wireframes were. And this final prototype should also be clickable so that whoever is looking at it can simulate the experience of using that actual product if it were live already. Okay, and then lastly is going to be analysis. This is once you have your clickable prototype, doing testing and evaluating that prototype. So you probably are going to iterate several times throughout this step and the other steps. So the entire process is kind of cyclical. You know, you're going to test the prototype, find what your issues are, and then go back to the design process. Or maybe you're going to go back to an earlier step and reassess what the needs of the user are. And each step within the process can also be cyclical within itself. So yeah, testing, evaluating, assessing the outcome. You can use user testing resources to conduct surveys to find out what works and what doesn't work with your prototype, and then iterate, make changes, and repeat. So these are just some example kind of survey questions that you could use. with user testing. What do you expect to do with this app? Just from looking at it, what is the first thing you would click on the screen? And how do you feel when you're using this prototype? As far as research during this phase, you can use yourself as a test subject. You can use a friend or family member as a test subject. You can interview someone. You can create a survey. You can use a third-party application. And I'm going to list some of those later in the resources. But there are lots of different ways to get some research during this phase. I know you guys have limited time, but there are still some things you can do to research here. Okay, and then lastly, this is just a list of some different tools and resources that you might find helpful. It'd be a good idea to take a screenshot here. These are websites for design information and design inspiration. There are award-winning websites, awards.com, some good tutorial resources, and then articles for creating user personas. And then on the right side, these are all the tools that would be helpful for each step of the design process. So I've just broken them down into category. And I'll just leave that up there for a minute to make sure everyone. Okay, and then I just want to leave this little kind of short list of design principles to keep in mind throughout your process when you're working on your projects. Maybe just jot these down and think about, you know, with every step of your process, are these in line with what we're trying to achieve for our final product? Yeah, and then I think this is a good quote moving forward, which is, done is better than perfect. I've actually never worked in a hackathon myself, but I've had to complete a lot of group projects before in a short amount of time, you know, a week or less. And you have to keep in mind that you do have limited time. So if you find that you're spending too much time being stuck on a certain step, just remember to keep moving forward, and that at the end of this, these few days, these 4 days, you need to have a product that is demoable. So look back on the guideline and think, are we at the point in the process where we should be to be able to have that demoable product by the end of this hackathon to present? And just keep that in mind. Okay, so here's my email if you have any more questions. And this is a link to GDI's class schedule if you're interested in taking more classes. Okay, and let me turn this off. I couldn't see the all of your comments when I had my screen sharing, so let me just go through these. So are most of you participating in a hackathon project? Okay. So I believe you've already had your team formation and ideation sessions. So you should know uh, um, what projects you were assigned to at this point. Okay, are there any follow-up questions? And does anyone want to look back at any of the slides if you didn't get a screenshot of anything? I'll just keep this open for a little bit longer in case anyone has a follow-up question. Okay, it looks like there are no follow-up questions. So I'm just going to go ahead and end the meeting. And good luck, everyone, with your projects and your presentations. And thanks for coming. Okay. Bye.